Most people think emotional reactions are harmless. They are wrong. Every time you react emotionally, you pay a price. Silently, immediately, and repeatedly. You lose leverage. You lose respect. You lose control. This audiobook is not about being nice. It is about being disciplined. Because in the real world, the calm mind always wins, and the reactive mind always pays. If you are tired of being triggered, manipulated, and drained, listen carefully. This is the cost of emotional weakness and how to eliminate it permanently. Chapter 1. Emotional reactions are not free. Most people believe emotional reactions are harmless. They think emotions are natural, human, unavoidable, and that belief is costing them more than they realize. Every emotional reaction has a price. Not later, not someday, immediately. Every time you react emotionally, something is taken from you. Credibility, authority, options. You may not see it. No one announces it. But the cost is paid in full every time. That's the key. Every reaction sends a signal. When you raise your voice, you signal instability. When you over-explain, you signal insecurity. When you defend yourself emotionally, you signal weakness. And the world is always watching for signals. You have a choice. You can believe emotions are just how you feel, or you can recognize what they actually are. Information about your level of control. Because in the real world, people don't respond to what you feel. They respond to how you carry yourself. And emotional reactions quietly destroy leverage. Let's make this practical. Picture a workplace disagreement. You feel disrespected. Your tone changes. Your body tightens. You react. Maybe you interrupt. Maybe you get sarcastic. Maybe you send that email too fast. In that moment, you feel justified, righteous, honest. But what actually happened? You told everyone in the room exactly where your emotional limits are. You showed them what pushes you. You showed them how to move you. Every reaction sends a signal. And once someone knows how to move you, they no longer respect you the same way. They may still be polite. They may still smile. But the internal calculation changes. You become manageable. That's the cost most people never see. Authority is not taken. It is granted silently by those who observe your behavior. And emotional reactions revoke it. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their validation to stay controlled. You don't need to prove your point emotionally. That's the trap. People think reacting proves strength. Doesn't. Proves exposure. Now let's talk about arguments, personal ones. You argue with a partner, a friend, a family member. You feel misunderstood. So you push harder. You explain more. You raise the emotional volume. You think intensity equals sincerity. Doesn't. Intensity tells the other person one thing. You are invested emotionally, and therefore vulnerable. Every reaction sends a signal. And here's the brutal truth. The more emotional you become, the less power you have in the exchange. Because calm people don't rush. They don't chase agreement. They don't fight to be understood. They observe. And observation creates control. You have a choice. You can win the emotional moment, or you can win the long-term position. You cannot have both. That's the key. Now consider impulsive decisions. Quitting suddenly. Sending messages you regret. Making purchases to soothe frustration. Saying yes or no out of emotion instead of clarity. These decisions feel right in the moment. They feel aligned with your feelings. But feelings are temporary. Consequences are not. Every emotionally driven decision narrows your future options. Optionality, the ability to choose later, is power. And emotional reactions burn options immediately. Every reaction sends a signal to others and to yourself. You train your nervous system every time you react. You teach it, this is how we respond. This is normal. This is acceptable. And over time, reactivity becomes your default state. That's how emotional weakness is built. Not in big moments. In small, repeated allowances. You don't wake up weak. You practice it. That's the key. Now let's correct a dangerous misunderstanding. Emotional control is not emotional suppression. This is not about becoming numb. It's not about pretending you feel nothing. It's about command. It's not about emotion. It's about discipline. You can feel anger without expressing it. You can feel frustration without acting on it. You can feel disrespected without reacting to it. The feeling is not the problem. The reaction is. You have a choice. And most people never pause long enough to see it. They move straight from stimulus to response. No space. No filter. No control. Calm people insert a pause. That pause is everything. That pause protects credibility. That pause preserves authority. That pause keeps options open. Every reaction sends a signal, but silence sends one too. Silence says, I am not ruled by this. I don't need to prove anything. I decide when and how I respond. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need their approval to remain calm. You don't need to react to be respected. Respect follows discipline, not emotion. That's the key. Here is your first behavioral instruction. For the next week, do not eliminate emotion. Eliminate immediate reaction. When you feel the urge to respond, pause. Breathe. Count silently. Ask one question. What signal am I about to send? If the signal weakens your position, don't send it. You are not losing. You are training. Every withheld reaction strengthens you. Every paused response builds discipline. Every calm moment compounds authority. This is how control is built. Quietly, daily, deliberately, and understand this. People may not compliment your calm. They may not acknowledge it. But they will feel it. They will hesitate around you. They will choose words more carefully. They will stop pushing as hard. Because calm creates uncertainty, and uncertainty creates respect. Every reaction sends a signal. So does restraint. You mastered one truth in this chapter. Emotional reactions are not free. You pay with power, or you invest in control. You have a choice. Now that you understand the cost of reacting, it's time to understand why the world takes advantage of those who do. Chapter 2. The world exploits the predictable. There is one thing the world loves more than talent, more than intelligence, more than effort: predictability. Because predictable people are easy to manage, easy to provoke, easy to control. And most people are far more predictable than they realize. They react the same way every time. They get angry at the same triggers. They defend the same insecurities. They lose control in the same situations. And the world takes notes. Predictable emotions create predictable outcomes. That's the key. If someone knows how you react, they know how to move you. If they know how to move you, they don't fear you. They calculate you. You have a choice. You can keep reacting the same way and wonder why nothing changes. Or you can become unreadable and therefore untouchable. Let's start with the workplace. A boss who constantly interrupts you. A colleague who subtly undermines you. A manager who pressures you with urgency and tone. Watch closely. They don't push everyone the same way. They push the ones who react. The ones who get flustered. The ones who explain too much. The ones whose faces change. Whose voices tighten. Whose energy spikes. Those people become targets not because they're weak, but because they're visible. Predictable emotions create predictable outcomes. The calm employee gets space. The reactive employee gets pressure. Why? Because pressure works on them. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need their approval to stay composed. You don't need to emotionally match their urgency. That's the trap. When someone raises intensity, most people mirror it. They think matching energy is strength. It's not. It's submission. You are letting their emotional state set your tempo. That's the key. Now let's talk about personal relationships. Partners, friends, family. People learn your buttons very quickly. They know what topics trigger you. They know which words make you defensive. They know when to push and when to pull back. At first, it's unconscious. Over time, it becomes strategy. Not because people are evil, but because humans adapt to what works. If raising their voice gets a reaction from you, they'll raise it again. If guilt works, they'll use guilt. If silence makes you anxious, they'll go silent. Predictable emotions create predictable outcomes. And the more predictable you are, the more often you find yourself emotionally negotiating instead of choosing. You explain yourself too much. You justify your boundaries. You argue for basic respect. That's not communication. That's exposure. You have a choice. You can keep teaching people how to control you, or you can stop giving free demonstrations. Now consider competition, business, negotiation, any environment where interests collide. The most dangerous opponent is not the aggressive one. It's the calm one, because aggression is readable, emotion is loud, but discipline is silent. When someone stays calm under pressure, you don't know where they stand. You don't know what they're thinking. You don't know how far they're willing to go. That uncertainty is power. Predictable emotions create predictable outcomes. Unpredictable calm creates hesitation. And hesitation creates advantage. That's the key. Here's the brutal truth most people avoid. If your emotional reactions can be mapped, you can be controlled. People don't need to overpower you. They just need to wait for the right moment. The moment you're tired. The moment you're stressed. The moment you feel disrespected. And then they push. You have a choice. You can live reactively, responding to the world as it pokes you. Or you can live deliberately, deciding when engagement is worth your energy. It's not about being cold. It's about being selective. Now let's address a common excuse. But I'm just being authentic. Authenticity without discipline is chaos. Honesty without control is liability. You don't owe the world your raw emotions. You owe yourself protection. You don't need their permission to stay unreadable. You don't need their understanding to remain composed. That's the key. Here's your behavioral instruction for this chapter. Start tracking patterns. Notice what consistently triggers you. Notice who benefits when you react. Notice what you lose afterward: clarity, leverage, peace. Then interrupt the pattern. Do one thing differently. If you normally respond immediately, wait. If you normally explain, stay brief. If you normally defend, stay silent. This is not weakness. This is reprogramming. You are teaching your nervous system a new response. You are breaking emotional predictability. And at first, it will feel uncomfortable. Because predictability feels familiar. Even when it hurts you, that's the key. People around you may push harder at first. They are testing whether the old version of you is still there. Don't explain the change. Don't announce it. Demonstrate it. Calm consistency is the message. Predictable emotions create predictable outcomes. Disciplined responses create new ones. Understand this deeply. The world does not exploit your talent. It exploits your patterns. Change the pattern and the dynamic shifts automatically. You don't need to confront everyone. You don't need to correct everyone. You just need to stop reacting the same way. That alone alters power structures. You have a choice, and that choice is made in silence, not speeches. You now understand why predictability is dangerous. Next, you must face the most seductive emotion of all, the one people mistake for strength. You learned how the world exploits predictable reactions. Now it's time to dismantle the emotion that feels powerful but makes you controllable. Chapter 3. Anger feels powerful, but it makes you weak. Anger is seductive, feels strong, feels decisive, feels like control, but that feeling is a lie. Anger does not make you powerful. It makes you predictable. And predictable people are easy to control. That's the key. If they can trigger you, they own you. Most people never question anger. They defend it. They justify it. They say things like, "I had every right to be angry." Rights don't equal results. The world doesn't reward what you're entitled to feel. It rewards what you can control. You have a choice. You can treat anger as strength, or you can see it for what it really is, a transfer of power from you to the trigger. Let's break this illusion apart. When you get angry, what actually happens? Your breathing shortens. Your vision narrows. Your thinking speeds up but gets sloppy. You feel energized, yes, but it's not clarity. It's adrenaline. And adrenaline is not intelligence. Anger compresses your options, pushes you toward extremes. Say it now. Decide now. Act now. That urgency feels powerful. But power is patience. That's the key. Now look at how anger plays out in conflict. Someone disrespects you. You react with anger. They react back. Volume increases. Positions harden. Egos collide. What changed? Nothing improved. But everything escalated. Anger never resolves conflict. It expands it. And expansion always favors the calmer party. Because while you are reacting, they are observing. If they can trigger you, they own you. Let's talk about long-term damage. Anger doesn't just affect the moment. It stains memory. People remember how you made them feel, not the logic of your argument. An angry reaction may feel justified, but it is rarely forgotten. Over time, people stop seeing you as steady. They see you as volatile. And volatility is not respected. It is managed. That's the cost most people never calculate. Anger trades long-term leverage for short-term release. Relief now, regret later. You have a choice. You can discharge anger immediately, or you can convert it into discipline. Because anger itself is not the enemy. Expression without control is not about anger. It's about discipline. That's the key. Now consider this uncomfortable truth. People who stay calm during your anger gain advantage over you. Why? Because anger reveals priorities. It shows where you're invested. It exposes what you care about too much. And anything you care about too much can be used against you. If they can trigger you, they own you. This is why seasoned negotiators stay calm. This is why experienced leaders lower their voice when others raise theirs. This is why disciplined people appear almost emotionless under pressure. They are not cold. They are controlled. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their validation to feel strong. You don't need to prove anything through intensity. That's the trap. Anger feels like proof. Calm is proof. Now let's address a dangerous misunderstanding. Suppressing anger is not control. Bottling it up until it explodes later is weakness in disguise. Control is conscious direction. You acknowledge the anger. You don't obey it. You notice the trigger. You don't surrender to it. You create space. That space is everything. That space is where choice lives. You have a choice. And that choice determines who is in control, you or the situation. Here is how anger destroys long-term advantage. First, it burns trust. People stop sharing openly with you. They start walking on eggshells. Second, it erodes authority. Your words lose weight because your emotions carry too much. Third, it trains others to wait you out. They know eventually you'll react. They just need patience. If they can trigger you, they own you. Now here's the uncomfortable part. Some people around you may intentionally provoke anger. Not to hurt you, but to control the situation. An angry person is easier to steer, easier to distract, easier to exhaust. That's why staying calm is not passive. It's defensive strength. That's the key. Now your behavioral instruction for this chapter. The next time you feel anger rising, do not speak immediately. Do nothing for 10 seconds. Breathe slowly. Lower your shoulders. Relax your jaw. Then ask one question internally. What would a disciplined person do here? Not a nice person. Not a polite person. A disciplined one. Often the answer will be less, slower, later. You are not losing ground by waiting. You are gaining control. Practice this repeatedly. At first, anger will feel louder. That's normal. You are breaking a habit. Anger is a reflex for most people. Reflexes feel automatic until retrained. That's the key. Every time you interrupt anger, you weaken its grip. Every time you choose calm, you strengthen authority. And over time, something changes. Triggers lose power. Provocations fall flat. People stop trying as hard because they get no reaction. If they can't trigger you, they can't control you. You don't need their permission to be calm. You don't need to announce your discipline. You don't need to explain your silence. Control explains itself. You now understand the truth about anger. Feels powerful, but it makes you weak. It hands control to the outside world. And disciplined people never do that. You learn to see anger clearly. Now it's time to confront another habit that quietly destroys strength. One that people mistake for honesty. You resisted anger. Next, you must learn why emotional release feels healthy, but secretly sabotages you. Chapter 4. Emotional venting is silent self-sabotage. Venting feels good. That's why people defend it so aggressively. They say it's healthy. They say it's honest. They say it's necessary. But what feels good in the moment is often what weakens you long term. That's the key. Relief now, regret later. Venting is not release. It is reinforcement. Every time you vent emotionally, you teach your nervous system one lesson. React first. Dump emotion. Feel better temporarily. And your nervous system learns quickly. It learns to crave release instead of control. It learns to escalate emotion instead of stabilizing it. That's how reactivity becomes your default. You have a choice. You can keep chasing relief, or you can build discipline, because it's not about expression. It's about regulation. Now let's be precise. There is a difference between processing and venting. Processing is slow, intentional, private or structured. Venting is fast, emotional, unfiltered. Venting doesn't solve. It spreads. And it always spreads downward. You unload on friends, on coworkers, on social media, on anyone who will listen. And every time you do, you pay a quiet price. Relief now, regret later. Let's talk about social oversharing. People think being open builds connection. Sometimes it does. But emotional oversharing does something else. It lowers perceived strength. When you constantly expose frustration, anger, confusion, and resentment, people stop seeing you as grounded. They see you as unstable even if they never say it. That's the cost. People don't judge your intentions. They judge your composure. You don't need their permission to stay private. You don't need their validation to stay composed. You don't need to explain everything you feel. That's the trap. Venting feels like honesty, but discipline is selective honesty. That's the key. Now let's look at real-world consequences. In the workplace, venting creates reputational damage. You vent to one coworker. They tell another. That person reframes it. Soon, you're labeled emotional, negative, or difficult. Not because you are, but because you leaked raw emotion into an environment that rewards control. Relief now, regret later. In relationships, venting creates imbalance. You turn a partner or friend into an emotional dumping ground. Over time, they associate you with emotional weight. They start bracing when you speak. They pull back, not consciously but instinctively, because emotional heaviness repels strength. That's the key. Now let's address the lie people tell themselves. If I don't vent, I'll explode. No, if you don't regulate, you'll explode. Venting doesn't prevent explosions, postpones them, and each postponement lowers your tolerance. You train yourself to need release sooner and sooner. That's how emotional dependency forms. You don't need their permission to feel calm. You don't need an audience for every emotion. You don't need to narrate your inner chaos. Silence is not repression. It's control. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. People use your venting as information. They learn what frustrates you, what exhausts you, what angers you, and information is leverage. You may think you're being vulnerable. They are learning how to move you. Relief now, regret later. This is especially dangerous online. Social media rewards emotional dumping, outrage, complaints, public frustration. But the internet never forgets. And neither do people. Your emotional moments become permanent records. Snapshots of weakness you can't retrieve. That's the price most people never calculate. You have a choice. You can externalize every feeling, or you can internalize discipline. It's not about bottling up. It's about channeling. That's the key. Here is your behavioral instruction for this chapter. Stop venting publicly. Not forever, strategically. Create one private outlet that is structured, not emotional. Write instead of speak. Walk instead of message. Delay instead of dump. When the urge to vent hits, wait 24 hours. If it still matters, address it calmly and directly. If it doesn't, you just saved your reputation. Relief now, regret later, unless you choose discipline. Over time, something changes. Your nervous system stops craving release. Your baseline calm increases. Your reactions soften. And people notice. They may not comment on it, but they will trust you more, respect you more, listen when you speak, because your words carry weight. You are no longer leaking emotional energy everywhere you go. You are contained, grounded, selective. That's strength. You don't need their permission to stay quiet. You don't need to explain your restraint. You don't need to justify your silence. Control justifies itself. You've learned that venting feels helpful, but quietly trains weakness. You resisted anger. You stopped predictable reactions. Now you're building containment. And once containment exists, something powerful emerges. Calm. That calm is not passive. It is advantage. You've learned what to stop doing. Now it's time to learn what to cultivate deliberately. You stopped bleeding emotional energy. Next, you'll learn why calm itself is one of the most powerful assets you can build. Chapter 5. Calm is a competitive advantage. Calm is misunderstood. Most people think calm is passive. They think it means you don't care. They think it means you lack intensity. They are wrong. Calm is not the absence of pressure. It is dominance under pressure. That's the key. Calm creates clarity. Clarity creates power. When pressure rises, most people speed up. Their thoughts scatter. Their voices change. Their decisions narrow. They self-destruct quietly without realizing it. Calm people do the opposite. They slow down. They observe. They think. And that difference decides outcomes. You have a choice. You can let pressure rush you into mistakes. Or you can let pressure reveal discipline. Because pressure doesn't create weakness. It exposes it. Let's start with negotiations. One side raises urgency, deadlines, threats, emotion. The inexperienced panic. They concede too fast. They speak too much. They show fear of loss. The calm negotiator does nothing. They let silence stretch. They let the other side feel the discomfort. They gather information while others leak it. Calm creates clarity. Clarity creates power. The calmer party always has more leverage. Because they are not rushing to escape discomfort. Discomfort is where advantage lives. That's the key. Now look at leadership. When chaos hits, people don't look for the smartest voice. They look for the steadiest one. A leader who panics spreads panic. A leader who stays calm absorbs it. Calm is contagious. Tone matters more than words in moments of stress. Posture matters more than plans. People follow composure. That's why leaders who stay calm during crisis gain loyalty without demanding it. They don't yell. They don't overreact. They don't perform emotion. They think. And thinking is rare under pressure. You don't need their permission to slow down. You don't need their approval to pause. You don't need to match chaos with chaos. That's the trap. Most people believe urgency equals importance. It doesn't. Urgency is often manipulation, or fear, or poor planning. Calm sees through it. That's the key. Now consider crisis moments. An unexpected problem, public mistake, a sudden loss. Reactive people spiral. They blame. They explain. They lash out. Calm people stabilize first. They breathe. They assess. They choose one controlled action. That single action often outweighs 10 frantic ones. Calm creates clarity. Clarity creates power. Because clarity gives you options. And options are strength. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Calm makes people uncomfortable. Why? Because it removes emotional feedback. When someone is calm, you can't read them easily. You don't know if you're winning. You don't know if your pressure is working. That uncertainty weakens the aggressor. This is why calm people are rarely bullied for long. Bullies feed on reaction. Without it, they starve. You have a choice. You can feed chaos with emotion, or you can starve it with discipline. It's not about being cold. It's about being clear. Now let's talk about decision-making. Most bad decisions are not made from lack of intelligence. They are made from emotional noise, fear, excitement, anger, urgency. Calm strips noise away. A calm mind can say no. A calm mind can wait. A calm mind can walk away. That's power. You don't need their permission to think clearly. You don't need their validation to choose slowly. You don't need to justify patience. That's the key. Here is your behavioral instruction for this chapter. When pressure appears, do not act immediately. Create a pause. Even 5 seconds changes everything. Lower your breathing. Relax your shoulders. Slow your speech. Then ask one question. What decision preserves the most options? Not the one that feels best. Not the one that ends discomfort fastest. The one that keeps doors open. That question is discipline in action. Practice this daily. In small moments. Emails. Conversations. Requests. Over time, calm becomes your baseline. And when calm becomes normal, clarity becomes automatic. People will notice. They may say you're hard to read. They may say you're unbothered. They may say you're cold. Let them. Calm creates clarity. Clarity creates power. You don't need their approval to be effective. You don't need their understanding to be respected. Results speak quietly. Here's what eventually happens. People bring you fewer problems, but bigger ones. They trust your judgment. They defer to your pace. Because your calm signals capacity. You are not overwhelmed. You are not rushed. You are not reactive. You are in control. That's the key. You've learned how calm gives you advantage. In pressure, conflict, and decision-making. But calm alone is not enough. Calm must be protected. And the greatest protection is discipline chosen. Before emotion even appears. You've learned what calm can do. Now it's time to learn how it is built. Chapter 6. Discipline is chosen before emotion appears. Most people try to control emotion in the moment it explodes. They wait until they're angry, until they're anxious, until they're overwhelmed. That's already too late. That's the mistake. Control is trained, not improvised. Emotional discipline is not a switch you flip under pressure. It's a system you build long before pressure arrives. You don't rise to the level of your intention. You fall to the level of your training. That's the key. When emotion hits, you don't suddenly become disciplined. You default to whatever you practiced yesterday. You have a choice. You can keep hoping you'll handle it better next time. Or you can prepare so next time is different by design. Because discipline is decided in advance. Let's dismantle a myth. People believe emotional control is about willpower. It's not. Willpower is fragile. It collapses under fatigue, stress, hunger, and pressure. Discipline is structural. It removes decision-making from emotional moments. That's the key. Think of athletes. They don't decide how to move mid-play. They trained the movement thousands of times. So when pressure hits, the body responds automatically. Emotional discipline works the same way. If you wait until you're triggered to decide how to act, you've already lost leverage. Control is trained, not improvised. Now let's talk about what training actually looks like. It's not motivational speeches. It's not affirmations. It's boring, repetitive, unsexy, and that's why it works. First habit: sleep discipline. Lack of sleep amplifies emotion. Everything feels heavier. Reactions come faster. Patience disappears. If you are sleep deprived, you are emotionally exposed. That's not weakness. That's biology. Discipline starts with protecting your baseline. Second habit: information diet. What you consume emotionally shapes how you respond. Constant news, endless outrage, social media conflict. This trains reactivity. You are rehearsing emotional spikes all day. Then you wonder why you explode over small things. Control is trained, not improvised. Third habit: physical regulation. Movement matters. When the body is stagnant, emotion stagnates. Stress builds. Tension accumulates. You don't need extreme workouts. You need consistent movement. Walking, stretching, breathing. These lower baseline volatility. A regulated body supports a regulated mind. That's the key. Now let's talk about microdiscipline, the habits no one notices. How quickly you respond to messages. How often you interrupt. How you react to inconvenience. These moments are training grounds. Every small reaction reinforces a pattern. Every pause retrains one. You have a choice. You can practice calm when it doesn't matter, or you can fail when it does. Most people only try to be disciplined in big moments. That's why they collapse. Control is trained, not improvised. Now here's a powerful truth. Your emotional reactions are predictable because your routines are sloppy. Chaos in lifestyle creates chaos in response. When your days lack structure, your emotions fill the gaps. Discipline creates containment. Containment creates calm. That's the key. Let's address resistance. People hear discipline and think restriction. They think loss of freedom. It's the opposite. Discipline reduces emotional taxation. You waste less energy. You recover faster. You think clearer. That's freedom. You don't need their permission to build discipline. You don't need their approval to simplify your life. You don't need to explain why you protect your energy. That's the trap. People will question your boundaries when they benefited from your lack of them. Stay disciplined anyway. Now your behavioral instruction for this chapter. Build a pre-emotion protocol. Decide in advance how you will respond to common triggers. When criticized, pause and ask for time. When disrespected, reduce words, not volume. When stressed, move your body before speaking. Write these rules down. This is not rigidity. This is preparation. You are removing emotional improvisation. Control is trained, not improvised. Next, install delay rules. No emotional emails sent immediately. No major decisions made while charged. No confrontations without rest. Delay is discipline. Delay restores choice. That's the key. Over time, something shifts. Emotion still appears, but it no longer commands. You feel anger, but it doesn't steer. You feel anxiety, but it doesn't rush you. Emotion becomes data, not direction. This is emotional maturity, and it is rare. That's why disciplined people stand out without trying. They are not louder. They are steadier. They don't react faster. They respond better. You have a choice. You can keep reacting and calling it personality, or you can train discipline and call it control. One creates chaos. The other creates power. Control is trained, not improvised. You've learned that discipline is built before emotion. Now it's time to learn how to use one of the most powerful tools of all. Once discipline exists, a tool so misunderstood that most people give it away. Silence. You built discipline internally. Next, you'll learn how silence positions you externally. Chapter 7. Silence is not weakness, it is positioning. Silence makes people uncomfortable. That's why most people avoid it. They rush to fill space. They explain. They defend. They talk. And in doing so, they give away power. That's the key. Silence shifts the burden. Silence is not absence. It is presence without leakage. When you remain silent, the emotional weight moves off you and onto the other person. They start talking. They start explaining. They start revealing. And revelation is leverage. You have a choice. You can speak to relieve your own discomfort, or you can stay silent and let the moment work for you. Most people confuse silence with weakness because they equate noise with strength. That's the trap. Strength is not volume. Strength is containment. Silence is containment in action. Now let's talk about arguments. In an argument, the reactive person talks more. They justify. They repeat themselves. They escalate. The disciplined person speaks less. They say one thing clearly. Then they stop. That pause does something powerful. It forces the other person to sit with what was said. It removes the emotional back and forth. It exposes who needs the argument more. Silence shifts the burden. The one who needs to talk is usually the one with less control. Now consider disrespect. Someone makes a sharp comment, a subtle insult, a dismissive remark. Most people react instantly. They snap back. They get sarcastic. They defend their worth. And in that moment, they confirm insecurity. Silence does the opposite. Silence says, I don't need to respond to that. I am not rattled. I am not seeking validation. That unsettles people. Because disrespect is designed to provoke reaction. No reaction breaks the strategy. Silence shifts the burden. Now let's look at power struggles. In any power dynamic, work, relationships, negotiation, the one who reacts first loses ground. Why? Because reaction reveals investment. Silence hides it. When you stay silent, others don't know what you're thinking. They don't know where they stand. They don't know what you'll do next. That uncertainty forces caution. Caution creates leverage. That's the key. This is why experienced negotiators pause after offers. This is why leaders don't answer immediately. This is why disciplined people don't rush to respond. They are not slow. They are strategic. You don't need their permission to be silent. You don't need their approval to pause. You don't need to fill space to be respected. That's the trap. People will pressure you to speak. When silence threatens their position, they'll say things like, "Say something. Don't you have a response? Why are you so quiet? Stay calm." Silence is already your response. Silence shifts the burden. Now let's address a fear people have. If I stay silent, I'll look weak. No. Weakness is explaining yourself unnecessarily. Weakness is defending against every comment. Weakness is reacting emotionally to bait. Silence is restraint, and restraint signals confidence. Now here's an important distinction. Silence is not avoidance. It's timing. You don't never speak. You choose when speaking matters. You don't respond emotionally. You respond deliberately. That's the key. Here is your behavioral instruction for this chapter. In your next disagreement, say less than you normally would. State your position once. Clearly, calmly, then stop. Do not justify. Do not chase agreement. Do not repeat yourself. Let silence do the work. Observe what happens. People will often backtrack. They will explain themselves. They will soften. Because silence removes resistance. Silence shifts the burden. Practice this in small moments. After asking a question, don't fill the pause. After making a point, stop talking. After hearing criticism, pause before replying. At first, it will feel uncomfortable. That's normal. Silence removes emotional crutches. But over time, silence becomes strength. People start choosing their words around you. They speak more carefully. They reveal more than they intend. Because silence creates space. And in space, people expose themselves. That's the key. You don't need their permission to be quiet. You don't need to explain your restraint. You don't need to announce your discipline. Silence communicates everything. You've learned how silence positions you. In arguments, disrespect, and power struggles. But silence alone is not enough. Silence must be protected by boundaries. Otherwise, emotion leaks in through every opening. You've learned how to speak less. Now you must learn how to engage less. Next, we address the discipline that protects energy, focus, and peace. Chapter 8. Detachment protects energy and focus. Most people are exhausted not from work, but from emotional access. They are involved in everything, reacting to everyone, carrying emotions that aren't theirs, and they call this caring. It's not. It's leakage. That's the key. Not everything deserves access to you. Emotional detachment is misunderstood. People hear detachment and think coldness. They think indifference. They think avoidance. They are wrong. Detachment is not apathy. It is selective engagement. It is choosing where your energy goes. Instead of letting others decide for you, you have a choice. You can stay emotionally available to everything, or you can protect your focus and stamina, because energy is finite, and undisciplined emotion drains it faster than anything else. That's the key. Let's talk about emotional boundaries. An emotional boundary is not a wall. It's a filter. It decides what enters. and what stays outside. Without boundaries, every opinion affects you. Every mood spreads to you. Every problem becomes yours. That's not empathy. That's absorption. And absorption leads to burnout. Not everything deserves access to you. Now consider how detachment works in practice. Someone complains. You listen, but you don't join emotionally. Someone criticizes. You evaluate, but you don't internalize. Someone reacts strongly. You observe, but you don't mirror. This is detachment. You remain present, without being pulled off center. That's power. You don't need their permission to disengage emotionally. You don't need their approval to step back. You don't need to match intensity to be respectful. That's the trap. People will try to pull you into their emotional storms, because storms feel lighter when shared. But shared storms still destroy clarity. Not everything deserves access to you. Now let's talk about long-term stamina. Reactive people burn out quickly. They are always on, always processing, always reacting. Disciplined people last. Why? Because they conserve emotional energy. They don't attend every argument. They don't correct every misunderstanding. They don't respond to every mood swing. They choose. And choice preserves stamina. That's the key. Detachment also protects direction. When you are emotionally entangled, you drift. Your priorities get hijacked by urgent feelings. Your focus gets scattered by other people's chaos. Detachment keeps your aim steady. You know what matters. You know what doesn't. And you act accordingly. Not everything deserves access to you. Now let's address guilt. People often feel guilty for detaching. They think they're being selfish, cold, uncaring. But here's the truth. You cannot lead, create, or decide clearly if your emotional bandwidth is constantly overloaded. Detachment is not cruelty. It is sustainability. You don't need their permission to protect your energy. You don't need to justify your boundaries. You don't need to explain why you're not reacting. That's the key. Now your behavioral instruction for this chapter. Start categorizing. Not people, situations. Ask yourself 3 questions. Does this require my action? Does this require my emotion? Does this require my attention right now? Most things only require one, and rarely all 3. Respond accordingly. If action is required, act calmly. If emotion is not required, don't give it. If attention is not required, disengage. Not everything deserves access to you. Practice emotional distancing without withdrawal. You are not disappearing. You are stabilizing. You are choosing to stay centered, instead of scattered. Over time, something changes. Your focus sharpens. Your energy returns. Your reactions slow. People may say you've changed. You have. You are no longer available for emotional chaos. And that makes you reliable. That's the key. Detachment also filters relationships. Some people respect boundaries. Some push against them. Those who push reveal themselves. And revelation simplifies decisions. You don't need to argue. You don't need to explain. Boundaries explain themselves. Not everything deserves access to you. You've learned how to protect your energy, how to preserve focus, how to engage selectively. Now there is only one step left. When detachment becomes natural, when silence is comfortable, when calm is default, something powerful happens. You become unreachable emotionally, not arrogant, not distant, untouchable. You've learned how to conserve energy. Next, you'll learn what happens when nothing can reach inside you without permission. Chapter 9. Unreactive people become untouchable. There is a point where discipline changes into freedom. Not freedom from responsibility. Freedom from control. That point is unreactivity. When nothing triggers you, nothing controls you. That's the key. Stillness is strength. Most people believe freedom comes from having options. Money, status, independence. Those help, but they are not the source. True freedom comes from emotional independence. When your mood is not hijacked by others. When your focus is not disrupted by noise. When your decisions are not rushed by pressure. That is untouchable. You have a choice. You can live at the mercy of triggers, or you can become unreachable. Unreactive people are not passive. They are sovereign. They don't suppress emotion. They transcend it. Stillness is strength. Let's define what untouchable really means. It does not mean nothing affects you. It means nothing commands you. You still feel. You still care. You still engage. But on your terms. That's the difference. When someone insults you and you don't react, you keep control. When someone pressures you and you pause, you keep leverage. When someone provokes you and you stay still, you keep authority. When nothing triggers you, nothing controls you. Now let's confront a fear. People worry that if they stop reacting, they'll be walked over. The opposite happens. Reactive people are walked over because they are easy to steer. Unreactive people are respected because they are hard to move. That's the key. Think about the calmest person you know. The one who never rushes, never explodes, never performs emotion. Do people push them around? No. People adjust around them because stillness creates gravity. Others move to accommodate it. Stillness is strength. Now let's talk about emotional independence. Emotional dependence is needing others to behave a certain way, for you to feel okay. Approval, tension, validation, reassurance. When you need these, you are controllable. Emotional independence is the opposite. You don't need agreement to remain calm. You don't need praise to feel steady. You don't need permission to be composed. You have a choice. You can outsource your emotional state, or you can own it. That ownership is freedom. When nothing triggers you, nothing controls you. Now let's look at real-world behavior. Unreactive people don't explain themselves repeatedly. They don't argue emotionally. They don't chase closure. They state. They decide. They move on. This doesn't make them cold. It makes them clear. And clarity is intimidating to chaos. That's the key. Here's something subtle but powerful. Unreactive people don't give emotional discounts. They don't lower standards because of guilt. They don't compromise boundaries to avoid discomfort. They don't rush decisions to relieve pressure. They tolerate tension. And tolerance of tension is what separates strength from weakness. Stillness is strength. Now understand this. Triggers only work when you identify with them. If someone criticizes you, and you instantly defend, you revealed attachment. If someone ignores you, and you spiral, you revealed dependence. Unreactivity dissolves both. You don't deny the stimulus. You deny it control. That's the key. Here is your behavioral instruction for this chapter. Practice non-response deliberately, not forever strategically. When provoked, do not correct immediately. When criticized, do not defend instantly. When pressured, do not rush to decide. Pause. Let the moment breathe. Notice what happens. Often, the other person fills the space. They soften. They backtrack. They expose intent. Because your stillness removed their leverage. When nothing triggers you, nothing controls you. Now let's talk about solitude. Unreactive people are comfortable alone. Not isolated, centered. They don't need constant stimulation. They don't need constant conversation. They don't need constant reassurance. This inner quiet strengthens stillness externally. Noise creates reactivity. Quiet builds immunity. Stillness is strength. Now let's address the final misconception. People think unreactive means disengaged. It doesn't. It means deliberate. You engage when it matters. You disengage when it doesn't. You don't bleed energy everywhere. That selectivity is what makes you untouchable. You don't need their permission to stay calm. You don't need their validation to stay grounded. You don't need to prove anything emotionally. That's the trap. Proving invites challenge. Stillness ends it. That's the key. Over time, something shifts dramatically. People stop testing you. They stop pushing boundaries. They stop provoking. Not because you confronted them, but because reactions stopped working. You became expensive to manipulate. Stillness is strength. And here is the final truth of this chapter. When you are unreactive, you regain authorship of your life. Your days are quieter. Your decisions are cleaner. Your presence is heavier. You don't chase power. You embody it. When nothing triggers you, nothing controls you. You've learned how to become untouchable, emotionally independent, centered. Now there is only one thing left. Integration. How discipline, calm, silence, detachment, and stillness merge into one operating system. This is the final form. You are no longer reacting. You are no longer drifting. You are directing. You became untouchable. Now it's time to lock it in. Chapter 10. Discipline changes everything. Discipline is not a tactic. It is not a trick. It is not something you turn on when life gets hard. Discipline is an operating system. And once installed, everything changes. That's the key. I decide. I remain calm. I move with control. Most people live reactively. They wake up and respond. They feel and follow. They react and justify. Disciplined people do the opposite. They decide first. They feel second. They act last. And that order reshapes their entire life. You have a choice. You can let emotion dictate direction, or you can let discipline set the course. Because emotional mastery is not suppression. It is command. You don't kill emotion. You place it in its proper position. Emotion becomes input, not instruction. That's the key. Now let's look at how discipline changes relationships. When you stop reacting emotionally, relationships rebalance. You no longer chase understanding. You no longer negotiate respect. You no longer over-explain boundaries. You state. You observe. You adjust. Some relationships improve. Some fall away. Both outcomes are correct. Discipline clarifies alignment. People who benefited from your reactivity will resist your control. Let them. People who respect your discipline will rise to meet it. You don't need their permission to change. You don't need their approval to be grounded. You don't need to explain your evolution. That's the trap. Explaining invites debate. Discipline ends it. I decide. I remain calm. I move with control. Now let's talk about decisions. Reactive decisions feel fast. Disciplined decisions feel slow. And slow feels uncomfortable to people addicted to urgency. But speed is not power. Precision is. Disciplined people move slower because they don't panic. They wait for clarity. They wait for leverage. They wait for the right moment. And when they move, they don't hesitate. They dominate longer because they burn less energy. That's the key. Most people sprint emotionally and collapse mentally. Disciplined people pace themselves. They don't rush to respond. They don't rush to commit. They don't rush to react. They understand something crucial. What you rush into, you pay for later. Discipline delays cost. Now look at outcomes. Emotional people win moments. Disciplined people win trajectories. One sharp argument might feel victorious. One calm decision changes the next 5 years. One emotional release feels good. One disciplined silence protects your future. You move slower but dominate longer. That's the trade. And it's a winning one. Now let's integrate everything you've learned. You learned that reactions are not free. You learned that predictability is exploited. You learned that anger hands over control. You learned that venting trains weakness. You learned that calm creates advantage. You learned that discipline is built early. You learned that silence positions you. You learned that detachment protects energy. You learned that unreactivity makes you untouchable. All of that leads here. Discipline is the thread that binds it all. Without discipline, calm collapses. Without discipline, silence breaks. Without discipline, detachment fails. But with discipline, everything holds. That's the key. Now let's address the final resistance. People think discipline makes life rigid, predictable, boring. No, discipline removes chaos, and chaos is what exhausts people. When your emotional world is stable, life becomes simpler, not easier, cleaner. Fewer regrets, fewer apologies, fewer emotional cleanups. You don't spend your days repairing damage you caused in moments of reactivity. That alone is freedom. You don't need their permission to live this way. You don't need their validation to remain composed. You don't need to convince anyone. Results will speak. Quietly, consistently. I decide. I remain calm. I move with control. Now here is your final behavioral instruction. The one that locks everything in. Create a personal discipline statement. Not motivational. Operational. Something simple. Repeatable. Unbreakable. For example, I do not react immediately. I pause before responding. I choose clarity over comfort. And most importantly, I decide. I remain calm. I move with control. Repeat it daily. Not when things are calm, when they're not. This phrase is not for inspiration. It's for alignment. It reminds you who is in charge. You. Now understand this. Discipline does not make you emotionless. It makes you ungovernable. Your environment no longer runs you. Other people no longer steer you. Moments no longer hijack you. You respond with intention. That's mastery. And mastery compounds. Each calm decision builds the next. Each silent moment strengthens the last. Each disciplined pause deepens your authority. Over time, something irreversible happens. You become consistent, not sometimes calm, not occasionally disciplined, reliable, predictable in values, unpredictable in reaction. That combination is rare, and rare things carry weight. You move slower but dominate longer. That's the final truth. You don't win by reacting faster. You win by lasting longer. You don't win by feeling more. You win by deciding better. You don't win by controlling others. You win by controlling yourself. I decide. I remain calm. I move with control. And with that, the price of emotional weakness is no longer yours to pay. You chose discipline, and discipline changes everything. Emotional weakness is expensive. Costs you peace. Costs you respect. Costs you power. The world does not reward emotional honesty. It rewards emotional discipline. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you reclaim control. Every time you stay calm, you gain leverage. This audiobook gave you awareness, but awareness is not enough. From today forward, your challenge is simple. React less. Observe more. Speak slower. Decide deliberately, because the calm mind always wins, and the reactive mind always pays. Choose discipline. Choose control. And never give your power away again.